Right guys, we have various reports regarding Apple's VR headsets, so let's delve into it. So beginning with the first report, The Elec has reported we could see Apple use LG's OLEDoS display tech to reduce the bulk of the headset. Now if you're wondering what OLEDoS is, this essentially are OLED-based microdisplays that are fabricated using silicon wafers instead of the usual glass and polyamide substrates. Now the major advantages for this display tech is the fast response time, but also the thin and light nature of these panels, and so that's going to massively reduce the weight and the bulk of this headset. And that is pretty important because you're going to be wearing this headset for hours, and so comfort is important. And so yes, Apple's focus must be to reduce the bulk and the overall weight of the headset, and that's exactly the use case for these OLEDoS panels. Now by the way, these panels are going to be very high resolution. They're going to be 3000 ppi, which is pretty insane, and Samsung is also developing their own version of this with around 10,000 nits of brightness. So yeah, that's pretty crazy, but for a high-end headset like this, having the best specs available does make sense. Now the Elec does report that Samsung's version of these panels is not going to be ready till 2024, so I'm assuming LG is solely going to produce the displays for the first gen headsets, and then Samsung helps build the second gen headset. And that's a nice segue to our second report from ET News that says that yes, there are already plans of a second gen headset launching in 2024. So while we should see the first gen headset launch in early 2024, there is early development for a massive second gen refresh that's going to focus on a design that's even lighter, the ability to make calls, and also ultra high definition cameras from LG. Now I know that ET News is not a very credible source, but I can see Apple already having initial plans for the second gen headset because they do usually have early plans for future products way before they release, and so this news is not surprising. Now coming back to the first gen headset, this report does tell us it's going to release in early 2023, which of course is what Quo told us weeks ago, and he has actually given us further details regarding the release. So to begin with, there should be a Jan 2023 event for the headset, our first Jan event since the iPhone I believe, so that's pretty massive. But anyways, regarding the specs of the headset, it's going to be $2,000, a very high-end headset, and it's going to have high-resolution 8K displays, advanced eye tracking technology to control the headset, and also more than a dozen cameras for hand tracking. The chip in this will be similar to the M2 chip in the Macs, and the sales for this, as expected, won't be incredibly high. It's going to be 1.5 million units, which I know sounds quite massive, but for an Apple product, that's not much. But yeah, that prediction does make sense considering the fact this will be a niche product since many can't justify paying $2,000 for this, and so that's why I'm glad Quo does tell us a cheaper version is in the works and it should launch around 2025. And yeah, that makes sense because usually when Apple enters a new market, the product they launch is pretty expensive, but within a few years they launch a cheaper version. Anyways, let's delve into your questions regarding Apple. So Alex Gira in Tech says, now the glasses do excite me, but I do hope we get more of an AR experience. And yeah, I'm pretty excited about the AR element of this headset. There's been a ton of focus regarding the VR sides, but what kind of AR features are we going to see with this? Well, the big one I can think of is, of course, virtual monitors. Imagine having your MacBook in front of you and then, of course, a bunch of virtual screens around you. I think that would be sick, especially for those using many tabs and windows at once, spreading that content out. That would be insane, and I believe the Meta Quest Pro does this. But of course, imagine this with 8K panels and the better AR tech Apple has. It should be a much better experience. So Donnie says, and it turns out all along the headset's for Apple Arcades. And yes, it would be a bummer if this was just for Apple Arcade games, but I doubt that's going to be the sole purpose. Yes, games are one element of the experience, but there's going to be other features, since I personally think AR and VR headsets and glasses are going to replace iPhones. So David says, Facebook users have experienced nausea after wearing their goggles for a long period. Maybe this is why Apple's focusing on shorter use cases. Maybe they have the same problems. And yeah, maybe that is the case. However, when Mark Rober was working at Apple, I do remember he explaining there was some tech they were developing that prevents nausea, so maybe they fixed this. I'm not sure, but I can see Apple addressing this when they do release the headset. So eBoy Mario says, I just don't know how the iMac Pro is going to fit in the lineup now, because if the iMac Pro was $2,000, then what's the point to the Mac Studio? The iMac Pro will get more sales than the Mac Studio because it's an all-in-one. Now I don't necessarily agree with that, because I do think most pros prefer the Mac Studio's form factor because A, you can use any display with it, and also B, if the display on the iMac is dead, but of course the SoC is still fine, it still does mean the iMac's completely redundant, whereas that's not the case with the Mac Studio because it's literally just a box, and so if your display does die, you can just replace it and keep using the actual SoC. But yes, I do understand that $2,000 for the iMac Pro might be too close in price to the Mac Studio, so maybe we see $2,500, something in line with the MacBook Pro 16-inch. I think $500 is a big enough price gap where some professionals will just save their cash and go for the Mac Studio and reuse existing peripherals instead. So Michael says, macOS on the iPad's not likely unless it's a bare bones version when the iPad's docked. Also, I can see a 14-inch iPad being possible, but not a 16-inch iPad, unless it's a drawing screen display like a Wacom Cintiq. Now, I doubt that Apple's going to go down that route, but yes, I think a 14-inch iPad, essentially a 12.9-inch model within a bezels, that could make sense, but a 16-inch iPad does seem pretty unlikely for the most part. And also regarding macOS, yes, I'm sure there's going to be compromises, but ultimately I can live with that. I just want the iPad to be a proper computer with software that of course is fully utilizing the M2 chip. So Tianan, I believe, says, I would love it with a display, only thing is, I have 4 original HomePods and 5 HomePod minis. They are in every room. I doubt I'll get rid of any, I'll add more to my rooms. HomePods overload. So yes, it seems like you're pretty set with the HomePods. I also would love to have multiple HomePods around the house. The thing is, without proper Spotify integration, they're kinda useless to me because I do prefer Spotify over Apple Music. However, if we do see a full-sized HomePods, I might get a few of those to connect with the Apple TV so that of course, I can have a proper home theatre setup. And regarding that, Tianan says, would love to see a HomePod soundbar, and I'm completely with you, that would be great. I think that's really the only purpose I would have for HomePods, so a soundbar below my TV would be nice. Anyways, that's about it for my thoughts, but of course, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Anyways, thank you for watching guys, make sure to like and subscribe for the latest Apple news and rumours. Check out the video above on details regarding Apple's VR headset, and on that note, see ya peeps.